Hey, you are listening to Abyss Gazing, a horror podcast where we celebrate all things spooky and mental health.
I'm your co-host Mark,
I'm your co-host Josh.
and we have with us Rez, the guitar player, one of the guitar players from Reverse the Halloween.
Yes, sir. Josh Rez here. What's going on?
Hello, hello, hello.
Another day in Wonderland.
Yeah.
So, Reverse the Halloween. Tell us about your project. How long have you been working with that band?
All right. So yeah, it's a thing that started over Xbox actually. It's been like 4 years. It was kind of a slow start, not gonna lie, because I mean it was me and some guy I met on the internet. But he ended up moving to my state. So we were able to get the ball really, really rolling there. So yeah, we've been trucking along for the past few years, trying to get more music out a bit more often. But yeah, it's been a fun ride.
I'm
And then,
sorry. You said you started over Xbox?
Well, actually, I met him on Instagram, and I was like, "Yo, dude, this cover was cool." And so he was like, "Yo, do you play Xbox?" I was like, "Yeah." So we hopped on Battlefield 4, and that's kind of where the friendship like spawned. And so it started as a joke. We were like, "Dude, to start a band." We are like, "Huh, yeah, that'd be cool, right?" And so then we like did. Yeah.
It's not every day
and
that you hear that story.
Yeah,
well,
yeah, really interesting.
it actually seems to be becoming more and more common these days, hearing about
Yeah.
friendships and all kinds of stuff starting over like Battlefield teammates and stuff like that.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Especially working remotely is really easy nowadays. So,
Yeah, it's that's what I do. I work remotely. I work from home. I hang out with my dog all day.
oh, that's
So
awesome.
I know. So
Man, I wish.
reverse the hollowing. The name you
Yeah.
said is a reference to Dark Souls.
Yeah, it's like my favorite game ever. Oh my god. Have the little dark sign thing tattooed. Like I love that
Nice.
game so much. It's ripped straight out of Dark Souls 1.
It's it's a game series that's known for because I've been playing video games since the 80s,
Yeah.
and it almost hits that line of what we call Nintendo hard.
Mhm.
It is punishing if you
Yes.
miss a dodge, anything like that, you die
Oh yeah.
quick.
That's it. And
Yeah,
then you have to spawn back at the bonfire and go all the way back to where you were.
I just spent, let's see, what was it, last year Elden Ring came out from the same creators.
God, yes.
I had well over 300 hours in that game. I think
Hmm.
I got the platinum, and let's see, I think I beat it 4 times
Yeah.
in the course of that 300 hours. People don't
Fire
understand
game.
the dedication it takes to beat some of these Dark Souls and Demon Souls and stuff.
Yeah. And then you do it and play it again.
Because there's a weapon you didn't use last time that plays
Hmm.
differently.
Yeah, you're just gonna rebuild, use magic this time, not just go strength. It's great. It's great.
This is why I'm
You
not a
look.
gamer.
It's fun. It's fun. I promise. It's a great time.
That's what my editor in chief always keeps telling me, that gaming, and I just can't get into it. It's just not my cup of
It
tea.
gives you an opportunity to reinvent yourself through the life of an animated character, and then you can live out a storyline that I don't know, makes you feel more than you are. I guess that's a good thing. I don't know.
Or in some games commit homicide without having to go to jail.
Look,
Yes.
look, I've killed enough
No
hookers in Grand
consequence.
Theft Auto 3, okay?
Oh my god. Yep. Yep. I know that's right. And then that one Modern Warfare 2 mission.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like
yeah, it's
I
all
don't
fun and games.
don't even
Yeah.
comprehend what's happening right now. Well, so I'm curious because I've listened to a little bit of your guys' stuff after Mark
Yeah.
sent it over. I'm curious if you can kind of talk about how like you guys went from being a duo to now a six piece. Because I feel like that's not something that you see. It's very common in the metal scene nowadays.
Yeah.
Could you kind of talk about how like uh the other four members kind of joined up with you guys and how you guys kind of harness the sound you guys have now?
Yeah. So as far as our bases, so it's me, Joe, Shelby. We are the OG trio because after me and Joe got the situation going, that's the guitarist. Met him online. My high school friend plays bass, and we're like, he joined in on us playing Xbox, and so our relationship as a trio began to flourish and come together. And then we're like, okay, let's do this whole band thing, right? And so Joe had moved up here at the time, and then I go to Guitar Center at the right time, I guess, and I'm jamming on something, and this dude, one of the employees, starts like jamming with me. So I was like, brother, yes. And so we get to chatting. I sent him some of our demos that we had so far, and he was like, yeah, dude. Long story short, he hopped on board and he's like, yo, I have this guy that I went to high school with that's really nice at vocals. So we're like, sick. This works out. He sends me a demo of like a cover he did. I'm like, you're sick. Perfect. Um, and so then we were a 5 piece for a little bit. He just screams, he doesn't sing. So we had to outsource for a singer. And that's our song Call of Anthemosa. Vocalist of a band Late Nine. They've been kind of blowing up recently. But yeah, he's on our song. He's on two of them actually. Um, and then later on, Shelby goes to a local show and he meets the guitarist of the band I was playing. Turns out he sings really well, actually. And he's always wanted to start a metal project because they were like, he's in a rock cover band. And he hops on board. And so then the team is together. Um, so yeah, it's kind of how it went down. Pretty sick. It's like a Disney movie.
Yeah. Everybody knows a guy.
Yeah, everybody knows a guy, and they just show up, and we all walk into a bar and start singing, and then everything's kumbaya, and it's great. Pretty much how it happened.
So right now, most of y'all songs are on Spotify, right?
Yeah, we're pretty much on everything. Pretty
Okay.
sure. Yeah.
And I think you've got what is it, like 6 songs out right now, 6 singles. Are y'all working on a full album or any anything going on with that or
We've been trying to get an album out for years, man. Like we've been like, oh yeah, we need to just throw an album together. We could do it. And then what happens is we're like, but singles, we just upload one song at a time. And then that's just as it's continued to be the trend. Like our game plan changes all the time. We kind of go with the flow, really. Um, just because the market's changed, the music industry's different. Especially being a smaller band. I've always been concerned about emptying the magazine too early, and we just put out all of these songs at once, and then they don't do as well as they could if we built momentum and dropped an album later on. So it's kind of been a back and forth. Because especially during the early bits of the band, I wasn't my own social media presence wasn't where it is now. Which being in the band and then having that has helped us tremendously numbers wise. But
yeah,
yeah,
talking about social media, that's kind of where I found out about y'all was
yeah.
I believe it was the Veggie Tales metal
Uh,
cover.
yeah, I'm pretty proud of that one, not gonna lie. Yeah, yeah, for all the homies indoctrinated, I was like, I think everybody at some point like watched Veggie Tales against their will at some point. And let's just put it in a different context because it low key slaps. It worked. It
He's
worked.
not wrong. Um,
Yeah.
it's interesting, like being looking at how music has changed because 5 years ago it was everything was like driven to be like an album, an EP, full
Right.
length, and now it's like how can we take a single and make it like an event? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the best examples of that would probably be like Falling in Reverse,
Yeah.
like way they market, they don't put out. I mean, they probably haven't put out like a full length album in at least 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
and there's all this hype around it, and you really build it up. You put a music video out there that feels like really cinematic, almost like a short film,
Yeah.
and it's really interesting. So like as you guys are like now that there's the market's kind of shifted in that direction, when you guys are writing, how are you guys finding like what singles to kind of put out? Do you guys have a lot of stuff that you guys are sitting on or being like, kind of like harnessing like this it just feels like the right time for this one, or it feels like the right time for this one?
Well, it doesn't help the fact that pretty much all of us have ADHD, right? And so what happens is is because I take how I write music very, very seriously. I am extremely systematic with it. And it's unfortunate I'm not like that in other bits of my life, but music, I'm like the hyper focus is wild. So I have to do it by myself. Like I can't write with other people instrumentally usually because I have a vision and I have to see it through. I cannot get distracted. I have to do it this way. And so I typically will like I have an idea because sometimes, like, because I've been posting videos on Instagram for a long time. So some of those videos, if you watch, you'll hear riffs that was from a video from like 6 years ago. It's like, it takes me a while sometimes, but I'll hammer out an instrumental and I'll send it through to the boys and they're like, we like that. Hell yeah. And so then vocals get thrown on top and then we re-record what we need to and then song's done just like that. And because I kind of have a bank of instrumentals, it can be overwhelming as to which one to start with and which one to be about what, or whether or not this one's going to be on an album. So this one needs to be tuned in this song and have these lyrics to match the vibe of this other song. And so because of that, we typically are like, let's just release it by itself. Let's just have it be its own thing. And that is just that, and it it's worked so far, but I do think the time is coming to have something with more than one song on it. Um, but it's it's hard, man.
No, I get it. Like the we had a few episodes ago, we had our friends over at Two Sides of Me, EJ, their vocalists on, and they've been slowly all year just releasing single every few months, and then now
Mm-hmm.
they just recently put out their full length or their EP.
Mm-hmm.
Um but like I also it's just interesting to see like how smaller bands operate, because you have some that will still operate in that like restreaming kind of marketing, and then you have a lot that are like doing what you guys are doing.
Yeah, because it's about if you think about it, like there are songs where it's like this one song blew up, so now this band is in a whole other bracket. Because if you have an element of your song like the barking thing, like arf arf, or you have something that catches on as a sound, and now everybody on TikTok is making videos with your sound. Oh my God, your song's gonna explode. So you
Yeah.
don't have to drop an album. You just have to have one song that has one catchy thing in it that people are gonna catch on to, and that's it. You've
Nice.
now built a career. And so it's writing the right song, releasing it at the right time, and having the right audience pick it up. Having those things match up. At least that's how I see it. But
No, I spend a lot more time on social media than Mark does. At
yeah,
least on the TikTok like video real side of it, and like
yeah,
yeah, like there are I see like how bands like mentioned like Knock Loose and like
mm-hmm.
Motionless in White, like how bands like that have like a couple years ago, like not say that they were small, but like now they're big deals. Like
Huge.
Sleep
Yeah.
Token's another one that kind of
Oh
blew
my
up because
god.
of that.
Oh
Like
my
Bad
god. Sleep token.
Omens.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so
Deftones, like
yeah,
you find it even
Deftones.
a reemergence, like Master of Puppets, like when Stranger Things threw that into episode 4 or whatever. God, and then people are like, play the Eddie song, play the Eddie song. Like it's wild. It is
Yeah.
wild how social media influences the music
hmm
market. It is crazy.
I find it interesting with things like that, specifically the Master of Puppets, how some people didn't even know it existed and thought
Mm-hmm.
it was made for the movie or made for the show or something.
Yeah,
That's
I
crazy to
yeah.
saw
me.
so many of those comments. It's like, I've been listening to this since like the early 90s.
All right.
It just,
I'm like, where have you
yeah,
been?
yeah, exactly. And then you have on your social media, you do a lot of learning solos and learning different songs. And one of them was it Dyer's Eve from Metallica
Yeah,
you did?
yeah.
Was there one of those older tracks you tried to learn that you just turned out to be a lot harder than you expected? That you underestimated
Mm,
almost?
with Metallica, not really, because I've been listening to them for so long that I just kind of know what I can do and what I can't do from listening to it. Um, typically not with Metallica. I don't have that problem. Avenged Sevenfold, I do.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, not really with Metallica. No, I'm a pretty aggressive fan of that band. So like I typically will know like, okay, I'm gonna have a hard time with Blackened. I kind of, already know, but
Yeah, it's funny. I'm the Metallica fan. My wife is the Megadeth fan.
I'm
You're
sorry.
either one or the other. It ends up being people are one or the other. So
It's like both. Listen to what you like.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We are getting ready to hear a brand new a track from you guys called Descending. What can you tell us
Yeah.
about this before we jump into and take a commercial break?
It is very, very, very metalcore. It has your typical, very stereotypical metalcore, but very melodic chord that the song opens up with. It is littered throughout the genre, and I use it just as much because it's great. So I really like the song structure because it doesn't repeat, but there is two choruses, and then there's a nice interlude in a polyrhythmic time signature. Really nice. Love that kind of stuff because I'm a Tool fan too. Don't judge me.
Oh, I love Tool.
And yeah, there's a nice breakdown. That's all I got for Descending. And the song, the lyrics, it's about the show, The 100. If you've seen that.
Okay, interesting choice there.
Yeah.
All right, this is Reversing the Hollow. The song is called Descending. We will be right back.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
Hey, welcome back to Abyss Gazing. We are hanging out, and we're going to be jumping into the biopic genre, depending on what you believe or what side of
I
history you stand on, with the supernatural thriller, The Conjuring.
which
Yeah.
I'm surprised we haven't covered earlier.
Really?
Yeah,
First time?
yeah. This is the first Conjuring universe film we've ever done on this podcast in over 80
Yeah.
episodes.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I feel like that one's pretty obvious, you know? Like
We did American Psycho a couple weeks ago, and the guest we had for that one was like, it was the same thing. It was like pick the movie you want to talk about, and these are
Yeah.
everything we've talked about so far. And he was like, "How have you guys not done American Psycho?" Like, I was like, I don't know, man. I was like watching this movie last night, and I was like, I don't understand how we've never covered this or Annabelle or The Nun or any of these movies before this episode.
Right.
So Annabelle Creation and Annabelle Comes Home are far superior to Annabelle. Just want to put that out there.
Far superior.
Far superior, yes.
No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I agree. Every time I go back to do like a Conjuring rewatch, I always like dread. That's like the one like low point of the series. I'm just kind of like,
Annabelle, yeah.
yeah. I'm like,
Mhm.
And the Nun, unfortunately, didn't live up to its potential for the first one, although the second one was really good.
I have mixed feelings. I have mixed, somewhat controversial feelings on the first Nun. I like the first Nun for what it is, but I also really like nunsploitation in horror. So it's not a
I
subgenre
have
that
no
gets talked
idea
about a lot.
how many, like when the Nun, I think it was the first one, they did it both times, but when the movie was about to drop, they kept throwing the freaking ad on Snapchat. So I'd be watching someone's story and it's just immediately her face, right? And I'll be like, now mind you, my tolerance for horror movies is significantly lower than most people's because I was sheltered, and so I didn't get exposed to horror until much later in my life. So it doesn't take much and then I'm over the edge. Like when I would see, like, the Nun has always freaked me out. Like I can't. And so when I would see her on Snapchat, the second I'm just trying to get an update on my buddy's life, I'm just like, I'm about to throw my phone through the window. Like I just
Yeah, he's the same way. He didn't get horror
Late-
exposure
late
till
to
later
horror.
in life.
late exposure.
And
Whoa, virtual
I
high
was ju-
five.
I was just that weird kid that was like sneaking and watching it in the middle of the night when I was like 6.
You're
So-
wild, man.
I'm jaded at this point. I would really like to watch a horror movie from the aspect of somebody that's not used to watching horror movie just to
It's
remember
not
what
fun.
that's like.
You don't sleep very much. I'm
Yeah.
paranoid. Like I have to close every door when I go to sleep. And then if I'm going to get something at night, I have to turn every light on as I'm going
So
because the light obviously keeps the evil away.
I'm curious about this movie in particular, like where each of you guys stand with like the Warrens as like paranormal investigators. Because like I feel like the Conjuring is such a hard movie to talk about from like a historical standpoint because there's like
Mhm.
a lot of accounts of like people like obviously these movies made the Warrens look real good. Um, but like there's a lot of just stories about like how they messed up a lot of lives and just for stuff like this. I'm kind of curious like where you guys stand on the Warrens.
So
Well,
remind me, those are the ghost investigator people that come through and they set up all the
Yeah.
stuff. Okay,
yeah,
okay, 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 okay. I got you.
Ed and Lorraine. Yeah. Yeah, everything. So the movies make them out essentially to be saints almost.
Hmm.
Like
But
heroes.
when you read interviews with people that met them and knew them, apparently Ed was just an asshole.
Hmm.
And everything
Mm.
was about putting out books or how can we turn this into something to make money. How true that is, I don't know. I don't think I've seen any interviews with him, but a lot of the interviews I have seen of people that met him all said the same thing. Lorraine, they said, was fairly decent human being, I guess.
Hmm.
So I'm almost kind of curious if like all right, so like because when you at the time that this movie was made, Lorraine was still alive. Ed had
Yeah,
passed. And they really make him out to be kind of this like saint. Like there's the
yeah,
guitar scene from The Conjuring 2 is a much better example, but like for this one, like I would say that like when he's like fixing the dude's Chevy, like that's like a great example of just like his like kind-heartedness and like how he's like almost kind of painted this like really heroic light. I've never heard that exact like way you've put it, but like I've heard that a lot of people were that they did more damage than they did good. And part of like the best better example I can think of is like another movie that's outside of the genre, but Bohemian Rhapsody. Because you had
Hmm.
Queen involved, you got a very polished, almost kind of uh
sterilized version of what happened.
sterilized of Freddie Mercury. Obviously they downplayed a lot of like the his more promiscuous sides and drug habits and stuff like that. They really tried to go for that. It's kind of almost the same thing that what they do here with the
Mhm.
Warrens is they kind of give them this polish. But if that is true what you said, like I mean, at this point they basically took what was intended, I guess, to be a one-off movie and built an entire franchise and universe around it. Like, I mean, these characters now are like well over $1 billion empire. We have what we have three Conjuring films, three Annabelle films, two Nun films. They had developed a
A fourth, a
Crooked
fourth
Man in
Conjuring is on the
Conjuring,
way.
and there is an offshoot of it with the Curse of La Llorona. So you're almost like 10 films deep into this point. So like all of like the books that they wrote back in the 70s, they essentially just transformed them into films for this new age.
Yeah, and then you add in the
Yeah,
Hollywood spin to it. So
true. Plus, The Conjuring is cool for me because it was filmed in my state. So it's like represent North Carolina. Let's go.
Nice. Oh snap! What part of North Carolina are you in? I'm in Virginia.
I'm in Concord, just
So,
outside of Charlotte, but I was born in Virginia though.
all right, that's like you're not too super terribly far from me. So
Nah,
yeah,
just a few hours, man.
I just moved out of the Virginia Beach area. So
Okay, right on.
he's way middle of nowhere
Hmm.
now.
yeah,
He might as well be in the desert or somewhere.
There is
in the
trees out
desert.
here. I'm out here
Yeah,
in
there's a couple.
Mississippi now. I'm out here in Mississippi now. So
You're the only friend I know in Mississippi now. So, um, The Conjuring, yeah. So,
Yeah,
what's y'all's experience with this movie?
I watched it for the first time. Man, how old was I? I was still living with my parents. I might have been like 17 or 18 or something like that. And I was like, I think I can handle this movie. I'm gonna try it out. I think I watched it twice, so I think I actually handled that one pretty decently. Like, I like it a lot because it's okay. The thing is, it's like I haven't figured out what exactly. I know the paranormal stuff. Typically with me, I'm like, like zombies, I'm good with all that other stuff. But when we get spiritual, dog, when somebody gets possessed, woo, we're walking a tightrope, man. Like, oh my god. So the ending of that movie, I mean, it wasn't like Insidious. Insidious kept me up for a few months. The Conjuring, yeah, I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't. I recovered from that one fairly quickly.
did you
Um,
ever see Sinister?
nope, sure won't. Now, I only say that because I have to sleep alone currently. But perhaps when I get settled down, I have a long term partner. Not going to bed by myself. I have something to throw at the evil entity that will enter my room. Cool. I might dabble a bit more. Or like when I have my dog with me, then I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. She'll bark, something enters, I'll be good. That's kind of how I have to think about it. But horror movies mess me up, man. But I do really, really enjoy The Conjuring though.
Well, yeah, I feel like The Conjuring is like I review films for part time for I don't want to say a living because it makes me sound too extravagant, but
No, it's okay. It's okay. Flex it. Go ahead.
a lot of the horror some of the horror movies that I hate and kind of dread like having come across my desk are anything that deal with the spiritual. And I say that mostly not because it's like scary, but because like as a Christian, like I believe in all of this stuff that these films deal with, but like
Facts.
also at the same time, like these movies like are like just feel like a dime a dozen. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
people miss the point of The Exorcist, and we got it wrong time and time again up until like the exorcism of Emily Rose is like the one example that I'll give outside of the Exorcist and the Conjuring, because I just feel like every other film just feels generic, heartless, like
Yeah.
it's just like they're here for the jump scares.
Right.
Well, exorcism films are essentially the same story over and over again for the most part.
They are
They're just
100%.
you could change the characters out and swap them around and they'd still be the same movie.
Mm-hmm.
Paranormal and haunted house are kind of the same way, but the way they did this one of the things in the Conjuring's benefit is I believe it was a $10 million budget that made hundreds of millions, or was it $20 million budget?
So I don't know anything about the budget, but I will say the thing that brings this onto the level of The Exorcist is because I
The
feel like
traditional effects.
is that, but for me, like from a cinephile perspective, from someone that loves storytelling, I need to be able to connect to the characters.
Right.
And I feel like I'd really care for them. And I feel like with this one, obviously, like the I don't want to say the Pesto family because that doesn't sound familiar. That is Bob's Burgers. Um, but even from the way that we are introduced to the Warrens, with not only as these like larger than life figures, but also at the same time, them as like parents, but also as like husband and wife. I think a lot of that strength in the storytelling comes from like Patrick Wilson and Firma Flimke, or whatever you say her last name.
Who?
Like Ed and Lorraine. That is their
Oh,
actual names.
Vera Farmiga.
Vera Farmiga. Yes, I'm terrible with names, as we have established on here.
I'm
Uh,
usually the one that's bad with names.
I,
Dang.
I think like their chemistry and like the relationship that they have with their daughter in this movie like really helps set it apart from like other ones. But then at the same time, like you also have the parents, and they're kind of like they're also like story and like they're emotional and just how the two narratives kind of like merge into one. I think it's just a thing that gets lost on a lot of paranormal and uh exorcist movies.
Mm.
They gave you likable characters. They gave you characters that you wanted to see what happens. Um, where they go, how it develops, as opposed to, okay, we're watching another slasher with the cannon fodder teenagers. How are they going to kill them now? It's it was a little bit different. You got a family that you got a background on, that they're not a family that has issues that you hate them for, like a lot of these movies have. It's just a family struggling to get by and get this house where they start dealing with all kinds of weird junk. And part of the reason I really like The Conjuring is the fact that it's almost entirely traditional effects,
Hmm.
Right. Yeah, that is
all
true.
of it. And that basement scene playing the hide and clap where Lily
Mm.
Taylor goes ends up in the basement and locked in the basement, and the hands just come out of nowhere by her head and clap.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that in the
I think that
commercials.
was in the trailer. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I was like,
Yeah.
nope. Because now when I go to sleep, I'm gonna be waiting for it. I'm gonna think about it. I'm gonna be like, nope, nope. And then just the idea of the only source of light you have is what was it, like a
A
match?
match. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so let's think here. This is very fragile. Okay, this goes out. That's it. That's it. You're done. Okay. I just because I'm such an empath, I always, when I watch horror movies, I put myself in that scenario. And then when I'm done watching the movie, I carry it with me still. And so I'm like, man, stuff like that. But I think The Conjuring was mellow enough in that department to where I still get, okay, I'm scared, but it's like, okay, I'm going to be okay though. Which is dope because I
You
love when movies do tension and release right. And that's a
Yeah.
really great, that movie is a really good example because it also applies in music. And I'm a musician. It's like, obviously, you build things up in a right way where I feel things, I get attached to things. And then when the big moment is supposed to happen, it's like, okay, it's delivered properly in a nice, really horrifying way for my standards. Um, it's great.
Yeah. No,
and then
I agree.
one of the interesting things they do is you see there was in one of the other movies you end up seeing what was it, Annabelle Creation, I think it was. You see kind of where the music box came from. The scene in this movie with the where Ed and Lorraine are giving the speech to like the college class or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
and they're playing the video of the exorcism in the background.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's Frenchie from The Nun.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's the exorcism of Frenchie from The Nun that's going to happen somewhere in that storyline, because they show it again, but with Formiga's sister, who's the main character in The Nun 1 and 2.
Yeah. Also, I was gonna say like the Frenchie that we meet here is actually recast for the two
Yeah,
Nun movies.
yeah.
mm.
And that it's the actress from The Nun is actually Vera Formiga's little sister.
Mhm.
So
Oh,
yeah, they're playing, I guess, relatives between the two movies.
Yeah.
wow.
But yeah, they tie all the different movies in some way, shape, or form back to the others. Like
That's dope.
Annabelle Creation has a reference to The Nun.
So how does the order work? Where does it start?
The timeline order,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's
it's the
The
Nun,
Nun,
the Nun 2.
Annabelle Creation,
Yeah.
Annabelle,
Yep.
The Conjuring,
Nope.
or is it Annabelle 3?
It's Annabelle 3, then it's The Conjuring. Um, then it's The Conjuring 2,
2.
and then it's The Conjuring The Devil Made Me Do It.
So they just released a couple documentaries about the actual case that that one was based on.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
actually one of them's
Yeah,
on Netflix. I can't wait to check it out.
and I think H Max has, I think, the other, but
I
it's
think so.
yeah, we're nerds like that. We
that's
find
what's
all
up.
that stuff.
You're really making me want to scratch the itch and just like, just go watch these movies and just say like, you know what,
These
if
movie
I take a L, it's okay.
I think it's interesting, like, we talked about, like, how, like, the landscape of music has changed before the commercial break, but, for better or for worse, Marvel has kinda changed the landscape of films, the way that we approach franchises now, so
Yeah.
where, before Iron Man, there wasn't ever a need for a quote unquote "cinematic universe" or for films to be connected. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
really have anything to do with each other, and so many other companies have really tried and failed. And what I
Yeah.
think is interesting is that The Conjuring, for better or for worse, has succeeded in that. And to where, yes, it's you have the trilogy of the Warrens, you have the trilogy, the Annabelle trilogy, then you have the
The
duology
non.
of the Nun. And they've tried and said, we want to, pursue other things within this universe, but I think they're really smart about how they approach this is because they don't really want to approach it because outside of Annabelle, the first one, the majority of these movies are like really solid. Like they're not like phoning it in and just doing something because it's gonna, chase or pursue like, $1 billion. Like they're focused on the story, and I think that's partially why it goes back to this point of why the first film started off is not only rewatchable, but also at the same time like what I would call like one of the very few like perfect ghost stories we've gotten in the new millennium.
Right. Agreed.
It's just it ended up like you mentioned Marvel. Marvel treated the movies and storytelling like comic book story arches.
Mhm.
And these are doing something kind of similar. Like you're getting the overall story of the Warrens and cases they worked on, but they're keeping everything tied together in a manner that everything is connected in its own way. So it makes everything relevant while at the same time, there's enough references that you don't necessarily have to watch the other movies before watching one of the others
Yeah.
Right.
because of the way they did the movies. There's enough reference there that it works without having to watch the others in the franchise, but they all tie together to just make it a little better when you do.
Mm. And I
I
think Marvel did it so well could just because of how like it was over like what Iron Man was like 2008. So
Yeah.
like it wasn't a rushed thing. And in fact, it wasn't like it's Iron Man. Yeah, Iron Man 2 might have been the next thing, but like the order, the way things kind of jumped around and came back, and then there is movies like even the Avengers was its own thing. It's like you had like little climaxes, ups and downs in there that just gave you more anticipation. Solid.
Yeah, and I think that's honestly the way that like if you're gonna build a story and like keep it coming back, you need to have that hook or that connection to that familiarity. And The Conjuring didn't necessarily, I don't think, ever set out to do that. They just kind of
Mm,
like fit into it where like they were like, oh, this movie, cost, $5 million and it yielded $100 million. That's literally a no-brainer to kind of retell that. But the thing that I've always liked and really respected about these movies is that like, yes, the Warrens have like quite literally a treasure trove of like these like stories, but that they are pursuing films really that feel different enough to where, to Mark's point, they stand on their own, but also at the same time that they're still like focused on the story. They're still focused on being different than what came before it. They're different than, uh, you know, whether that's different settings, moving from this countryside in The Conjuring here to Britain in The Conjuring 3 to being specifically about a court case in The Conjuring 3, like making those changes. And I'm just gonna change the subject real quick because I'm like really wanting to jump in to talk about this. Is like this movie, the ending to this movie, I think completely changed the game on what a person can do in terms of uh doing like the exorcism rites, because the way that this movie ends is just for clarity and you know um such is this movie literally ends with Ed doing the exorcism. And uh the husband, Ron, even at one point says like, hey, like you're not a priest, you're not supposed to do this. And I think it's this misunderstanding that like if you don't have a title of a priest or father or X, Y, or Z pastor, whatever you want to
Yeah.
give your officiant, that you can't do these types of things. When that's like if you're of the church, that's just a Western lie that you've been led to believe, because the Bible actually says that we are a royal priesthood. And I love the fact that this movie actually embraces that and says that like literally anyone can do this, because literally anyone would face this. And a demon's not going to wait on whether or not the Vatican's going to agree to for an exorcism or not. So why should you wait?
Well,
I didn't
anyone with the
consider
proper
that.
knowledge.
Yeah, it's like, of course, people are going to be attached to the idea that you have to have the title associated to your name to be able to perform something like that. But at the same time, I think it's understood. Like, if in this situation, if you had the resources, because obviously you need the book, you need got to know the words, right? But in that situation, it's like, okay, like, look, that doesn't matter. All right, we just got to do what we have to do right here, right now.
Well, what's interesting about this case in particular is that when we get kind of like the introduction, because the way this movie is set up is you get like the Annabelle introduction, and then it's like they're speaking somewhere, and you get that like little like Ed and Lorraine were, she was what was she like, she was like a
Clairvoyant.
clairvoyant. And then Ed was the only uh non-sanctioned, essentially exorcist, for lack of a better word, recognized by the
Recognized by
church.
the church,
Yeah.
by the Catholic Church. Yeah. That's what they said in the movie. How true that is, I don't know. I haven't looked into that part. But did you
Yeah, I think
catch
we
the
established that.
did you catch the Amityville reference?
In this one, no, but I know that there is an Amityville reference in the second or third one.
Yeah, somebody they're Ed and Lorraine are talking to somebody and they make a reference to that case. Was it Rhode Island, I think is where Amityville is. I think. I'm maybe wrong on the state, but they make a reference to that case up there in this state, and it's a reference to Amityville.
Yeah.
We watch these movies too much, if you can't tell.
No, man, I feel like I'm like seriously missing out. Like, 'cause I have to take these movies in chunks. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
Well,
you have to consider your own mental health first. And
oh,
I can
absolutely.
I
and
can
it's
progress into mental health if you'd like, but Mark, go ahead.
I was gonna say it's funny because you were saying you have such a hard time because you had a late introduction into horror. We had somebody we were trying to get on at one point that was a mixed martial artist, former UFC fighter. Edward, I approached him about the idea of doing our podcast with us about a horror episode. He's like, I'm a big chicken. I can't watch horror. And it's amusing. This big tough dude who fights for a living is terrified of horror movies. And
Yeah,
I guess it's kind of that it doesn't matter who you are. Not everybody handles these things the same.
that is true.
Well, it also matters, like, it's also proof that not everyone, is in the same mental health space. And, like, Rez was talking specifically earlier about like playing Metallica and knowing like what he can and cannot play. Like it's also about like establishing those eh, parameters within your own life about like what you can and cannot handle, whether that's horror movie or playing guitar or like even something as simple as like if you have a gambling problem like or you're a recovering alcoholic like not being like XYZ from the bar or like from a casino, just as an example.
Absolutely. Setting boundaries for yourself and sticking to them.
It's
Yeah,
yeah.
but and in some cases, I always find it kind of odd sometimes when people set boundaries and others won't respect that.
Yeah.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Calling all cosplayers and photographers in the vibrant cosplay universe. Are you ready to take the spotlight and be featured in the hottest cosplay magazine around? Look no further than Creative Cosplays Magazine. Dive into a world.
Well, that just means that you need to delete those people from your life, or
But I
find a
mean,
way to get them
also,
out.
to be fair, it's like, which is a lesson that I had to learn is like some people were raised where a lot of people get scared of that word. And that's because in childhood, at some point, you tried to place boundaries, be it you knew that's what was happening or not. You tried to set, uh, this is a non-negotiable, right? And that wasn't respected. And now you think, okay, there's no point in me making these because they're not going to be respected. Therefore, in adulthood, that is still something that was never reprogrammed. It's like, why am I going to place boundaries on anybody or anything when they're not respected? And it sucks.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I've learned in therapy is like how much of those like life lessons I learned from childhood and like how I'm kind of like in the reprogramming stages now. Just I feel like I'm just like holding like the power button on my life and just waiting for that like blue screen of death to go away.
I love that you use that analogy because that's exactly how I refer to this stuff, because it's like our brain is a computer, neuroplasticity. Like what what you feed your brain is the result you're going to get. Right. And it's crazy how that works. And it's like, of course, with my low tolerance for horror movies, that's probably because I tell myself all the time that horror movies scare me. Probably it's a head thing. And, this might be a good place to start working on that. But it's interesting, like just how like a lot of the progress you will see comes from just changing the dialogue up here. And it's dope. You said you go to therapy. That's awesome. That's sick.
It took me a long time to reach that point. My wife was
I
like,
get it.
I think you should see someone," and
Yeah.
finally after years. But one of the things that that I think obviously there's a lot that The Conjuring tackles from like a mental health perspective, but one of the things that struck me on this rewatch is it's like probably like at the start of the third act, but there's like ghosts and like everyone that essentially keeps saying like, look what you made me do, and like you see like the slit wrists, and then like you have like the mom too, and it's like shifting your own like mental health issues onto someone else so that like you would avoid the blame. That's incredibly toxic for not only you who are just essentially like avoiding the issue, but also at the same time, you are essentially starting that process of creating a lifelong wound for whoever you're shifting that blame to, because now they think that here is something that I have that I didn't know was a problem, and now it is that I'm causing, X, Y, and Z to create not only hatred towards themselves, but are also the source of depression, suicide, and self mutilation.
Yeah. And it's interesting because just in my own experience, like a lot of that when you kind of dump on people, because I've been that guy in a sense of
Mhm.
like my problems, I'm going to make it your problem now. But from a place of anxious attachment, and when the clinging, when that doesn't work, then it's like I forget what the phrase is, but it's lashing out behaviors basically where this is your last hurrah. It's like, okay, this is, yeah, it's pointing the finger, and it's like trying to evoke guilt out of whoever it is. So that way it's like you won't leave. And it's like, yeah.
Which is also like the signs of like actually what I would argue is like a really toxic behavior, because like, I've been around, I've dated people that said, hey, if you leave me, I will kill myself.
Yeah.
Or, I've part of like what like brought me to the edge of like actually considering suicide was, you know, I got cheated on. I got really depressed. I hit probably the lowest point I hit in my life. I mean, there was like a bunch of like other things going on with my family and my my grades at the time, and so like
Hmm.
but like shifting that blame instead of saying like, all right, like I'm just gonna take myself out of this equation and kind of have this out of body experience. Like, what do
Yeah.
I need to work on to better myself? What needs to happen? And kind of looking at that head on, and it's hard to like look at that, because like you're essentially part of that process of growing is having to kind of resalt the wound every time. You're
Yeah.
essentially like reopening it up every time it tries to heal, but that's a part of the healing process.
Yeah. And what people get wrong a lot, I feel like, is when people are like, yeah, I'm in my healing era, right? And it's like, go to the gym, you do the obvious stuff, you go to the gym, you get yourself right, you do all the physical stuff, but nobody said that healing feels good necessarily, and that it's fun and that it's great. Because what I've found, the things that healed me is when I got very uncomfortable and I had the conversations with myself that I've been avoiding. And you have to admit to yourself, most importantly, like, okay, yes, this is the problem, and it's probably from me, it's internal, it wasn't whoever, it wasn't such and such, it was me. And you know I'm a big philosophy guy, so like stoicism is something that has really changed my perspective on a lot.
Marcus
And
Aurelius.
yeah, love meditations, like all that stuff, like literally it really shifted a lot internally for me. And it's realizing like, really, it's the dichotomy of control. It's separating what is in my control and what is not. And what is in my control is in my attitude and how I'm going to respond to the situation. So like I feel like once you kind of have that self-awareness, then healing gives you a clearer path,
Mhm.
you know.
But the hardest part of the whole process is acknowledging that you have the problem to begin with.
Yeah.
That's facts.
And you're never going to go anywhere if you won't acknowledge that and just want to put it off on everybody else.
Yeah.
Then you're just ignoring the fact that you have an issue and it's not your problem, it's everybody else. It's Josh looks like he wants to say something.
Yeah, it's one of those things that not to like jump in or cut you off, but it's also one of those things that like it's about humility, because nobody ever wants to see themselves in this negative light. We live, as we've established several times in this episode, we live in a very heavy social media age, and a part of that is you're constantly casting out your best efforts, your best emotions, your cutest outfits,
Hmm.
what you're doing, XYZ. You are literally crafting the perfect version of yourself for people to see. And, you know, I don't know the last time that like I probably shout out to my friend Matt, who's like is really vulnerable about his mental health on social media, because
Hmm.
like it's at that time that, but it's a rare rarity to actually see something of like what you're talking about, Mark.
what people acknowledging their own issues and accepting responsibility for it. Yeah,
Yes.
it seems like we're at a place where it's more common to run into somebody that nothing is my fault, it's all yours, than it is to see anybody with any sort of responsibility for their own actions these days.
Yep. And those are the people again where it's like, okay, the problem isn't me. It's everything else, my circumstances. Like, yeah, that's a path to stay exactly where you are right now and to not ever learn anything, not ever really grow. And it sucks because I'm like, you only live life one time. Why not be the absolute best version of yourself?
Mm.
And because you can post little snapshots of your life in the perfect lighting, filtered, edited, have it presented in a certain way. I mean, you can make it look however, and that might not actually be the case. But what you need to
And
do.
I think eh, talking about boundaries in this, it's also important to realize when to cut somebody loose, cut a group loose, cut people loose, no
Yeah,
matter who they are. If you're dealing with somebody, no matter how long you've known them or how much you give a crap about them, if you're dealing with somebody that's just constantly dragging you down, then it's in your best interest to cut them loose. And that can be difficult if it's somebody that you care about.
yeah,
Yeah, at some point it needs to be like you need to be focused on your mental health. And I think sometimes we have this, at least again, growing up in the church, like I'm talking with a friend earlier today about this, that like you uh, can't show any like negative emotions or, whatever, because like you constantly have to be like lowly and like putting others against yourself. But like, if I can't love myself, then how am I gonna know how to love others? Like,
exactly.
like self-care is super important, and I think that we downplay the importance of self-care, and that's just not a healthy place to be for your mental health, for those that are around you, especially if you're trying to build a community, if you're trying to eventually like, be there for your friends, then like you
Yeah.
also have to take care of your mental health first.
And I think a big part of that problem and why that's so difficult for some people is people want a quick fix. People want the right thing to show up in their explore page that says the right words and then everything's fine when that's not how it happens. It's delayed gratification. It is a journey and it's called that for a reason. And it's not linear either. Like you're gonna feel on top of the world one day and then it sucks the next day and it might suck the day after that and maybe the day after that one. But then it's like, you realize like hindsight's 2020. Yeah. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, I've grown a lot. And then that thing that was weighing you down so much, you're like, huh, it's been a couple hours since I thought about that. And it's a slow burn sometimes, but like I think those breakthroughs do happen where you have like that aha moment. But mostly that's not how it is. And it's being okay with the fact that this is something that takes time.
And it's dealing with those issues and those hard times is ultimately what makes you who you are and capable of dealing with
Yeah.
Yeah.
and knowing what your ultimate boundaries are.
Yeah, and like sometimes just like realizing, what is going to be, what do you define as healthy boundaries, and what you do define as, because I've shared this before, but like I love the horror genre. I'm the programmer of a horror film festival now. Mark and I cover tons of horror film festivals, and like, we've been doing this podcast now for like 2.5 years, and this is the heartbeat of what I love to do in terms of
Yeah.
like extracurricular activity. But like I wasn't always this way with the genre. Like the genre and me had a very unhealthy, toxic relationship at one point, to where I was like, I need to step back, kind of get back into my own headspace and bring myself to a healthy portion before I can continue this relationship. And now, like, I go back, like, I know the days where, like, I can watch horror and the days where I can't watch horror. And those are the days that, like, if I can't watch horror, then I need to watch, a comfort film. I need to watch something that's going to make me laugh, or, be around my wife or, be around friends that are gonna track, you know, track me a smile and stuff like that, and bring you back to a sensible place. And sometimes but most times I feel like it's all about that trial and error when it comes to stuff like this.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just watch war all the time.
You do. At this point,
that science fiction and like anime on occasion.
Yeah. Yep.
I-
I've been on the Dragon Ball Z wave pretty hard.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball. I'm still waiting. They're supposedly doing a new season of Dragon Ball Super. Finally.
They are.
I
Cannot
can't wait. The Morrow arc is going to be fantastic. That was the whole purpose of the last movie, was to bring Gohan and Piccolo up to snuff with Goku and Vegeta power wise. That was the whole point of the movie, and it was fantastic.
I haven't seen it yet, but I will.
Oh yeah, it's good. My only issue is that it's computer and not hand drawn. That's my only issue with it, but it's still pretty good.
Gotcha.
The Conjuring.
I'm still trying to get him to watch some anime horror, like Empire of Corpses or something like that.
Yeah.
He won't do it.
Eventually. Maybe we'll do it in January.
Maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Maybe you get it.
Perhaps.
Who knows? Perhaps. Yeah, I think that this in terms of the Conjuring films, any closing thoughts you guys have about this film?
I don't care what anybody says. I'm going to enjoy them either way. They're good films. They're fun.
It is one of the ones that I lose minimal sleep over, and that is part of the enjoyment. I still get, I do enjoy the jump scares, like when, I'm not gonna lie, but I scream so loud. All right, what was it when girl was hovering over her on the ceiling? Oh my god,
Yeah.
dude, I made a noise I cannot recreate. Like, oh my god, like that kind of stuff, and it's fun because when you're with people, you have a nice laugh. So it's like,
If
those are the kind of friends I like watching those movies with.
yeah.
Like I've got a friend that she is like a little kid when it comes to horror movies, but she would go every now and again with us. We'd all go to a movie. I think the last one we went and saw was Black Phone. Was the last one we all saw together.
Okay.
So, and she's like that, the littlest thing, and she's half jumping through the roof, and it's hilarious. We all get a good laugh.
If you ever get a chance to sample yourself like watching some of these movies and like have like the audible like reactions, like you just put that in a breakdown. Like,
oh, I think that'd be fire. That's a great idea. Y'all just wear a wireless mic, and then oh man, so you're giving me content ideas. That's gonna like, man, it might scar me a little bit, but it'll be so worth it. Like, I have the track pre-recorded and everything. Like, let's go.
He's gonna jump and scream, and it's gonna sound like the dude from The Darkness or 3 Inches of Blood.
We might be able to make like a black metal song out of it.
there you
Something
go.
where the vocals like are trash, but it'll work.
That'll
I mean,
happen.
I'm a fan of black metal, so I can get
Me
down
too,
with
but the vocal production isn't great.
not usually. Yeah,
Not usually.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us on this episode of Abyss Gazing. Rez, where can people find you guys and find Reverse the Hollowing online?
All right. Find me on Instagram at Josh_Rez, and then on TikTok at Josh Rez, one word. Verse the Hollowing, we're on all the major streaming platforms. And yeah, there's also a link tree in all of my bios that'll take you straight to us.
Mark, I know it's a running gag at this point, but where can people find you online?
I actually have a different answer for you this time. Well, the normal answer, but a different response. I'm actually working on a big project. I'm going to start posting some stuff for somebody for the miniature painting that I do. I'm on Titanium Juggernaut Painting on Instagram.
So,
And once I work out some kinks, I plan on being super nerdy and streaming my 3D printer for stupidity's sake because it'll be fun and maybe I can get other people to donate and pay for my filament.
look, as Rez just said, you know, it's all about content, bro. Like, you just
There
set a
you go.
camera and you just
There's
walk away.
Oh, I can give you a link right now and you can see my printer running. It's it's figuring out how to connect that to everything else to make it work right.
I'm sure you'll
Yeah.
find out. Well,
Yeah.
way to throw a year's inside joke out the window.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Mm.
You guys
But not
could
this time.
you guys could find me. I'm on Captain Nostalgia on Letterbox, and you guys can follow my other podcast. That's High Praise, a Nicolas Cage podcast. You guys can find Abyss Gazing wherever you guys get your podcast from, and you guys can also follow our parent company, Victims and Villains. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Patreon, and wherever you guys get your podcast from. And until next time, remember, the longer you gaze into the abyss, the more the abyss gazes back into you.